The following video is part of a 4-part series in helping you get set up with chickens. Part 1 will cover your breed selections. Part 2 will go into getting set up for your chickens once you've got them home. Part 3 will be covering your general care and maintenance. And Part 4 will go a little more in depth on illnesses and parasite identification. If you're finding this video earlier and all 4 of them haven't been posted, please hit like and subscribe, and you'll get notifications when the new videos are posted. We will also have links to each video at the end of the videos so that you can follow them in order. Okay, today we are in our coop, and this is our part 2. Basically, we are covering what you need to get set up, whether you're bringing home baby chicks or pullets or full-grown chickens. Your 2 primary reasons for a coop are having some place for the chickens to roost at night and also to lay their eggs. Some people have their chickens spend all day in their coops. They have much larger coops. This one's pretty reasonably sized for 17 or so birds, but primarily, they are only in here to sleep and to lay their eggs. So you want to make sure it's set up for those 2 things more specifically than anything else. We have our roost here, and they say you want to go around 2 inches, whether you're using old tree branches or you're using 2x4s. You're going to want to make sure you stay around that 2 inch. Ours do get up a little bit thicker than 2 inches, but we have larger birds and they seem to like the larger roost. So try to accommodate the breed of bird that you have. If you have much larger birds, see if they like a larger roost to sit on at night. You're also going to want to consider some kind of a catch system. Now, this isn't something that we did earlier on that we kind of saw other people doing and we implemented because it's a great idea and an easy way to keep your coop cleaner. At night, when they're roosting on here, they will drop manure and tons of it. We fill up a 5-gallon bucket every few days with just the 17 birds. So it is an easy way, and then you can keep that clean and you don't have to worry about your bedding and the floor getting all matted up with chicken poop and chicken manure. And then your roosting box or your nesting boxes, you're going to want to make sure you have enough to accommodate your birds. Now, whether you're in the country or you're in the city, I understand a lot of the municipalities have bylaws that only allow a certain amount of chickens. You're still going to want to make sure you have at least a couple of options for the chickens. Even if you've only got 4 birds or 6 birds, and if a couple of them want to lay at the same time, they're going to need another option. And it's funny, but sometimes they just get picky and they want to lay in the same place every time. So give them a couple of options and make sure they're a decent size. Now, these are a little oversized. Again, we have larger birds and they seem to be more comfortable in these larger nesting boxes. And we have less egg breakage. The Jerseys and the Brahmas are able to get up and move around in these a little easier. So we did make these a little oversized. I want to say they're around the 16 by 16 range, but most of your chickens can handle 12 by 12 or 14 by 14. So your bedding in the nesting boxes, we use straw. Some people use shavings, hay. You're going to want something nice and soft in there. They do stand up when they lay. So, that egg is going to drop, 4 inches, 6 inches, whatever the size of your bird. And you're going to want a nice soft bedding for them to sit in. Plus, they like to sit in there and they'll nest. They'll actually start to pick around and make nests. It's quite neat. But yeah, so you're going to want to make sure you've got good nesting boxes for them and good roosting. And if you're in town, in the municipalities, obviously you may be limited on space. So considering your coop, you may want to try and make something with a little more floor space if you don't have a big run for them outside or a nice area for them outside to free range in. This coop was an old grain bin that we converted. Again, we're out in the country, so we have outbuildings on our properties and stuff that we can kind of convert to our needs. This one we converted into a chicken coop. We put in some windows and fastened it so that the chickens can spend some time in here in the cold winter months. You are going to want to try and figure out some kind of a run for your chickens, whether you're in the country or you're in the city. They're going to want to be outside. They're going to want to scratch around and look for bugs and mice and crickets and all those things they love to eat. So you're going to want to try and figure out some kind of a run for them. And that'll bring me into considering your predators, especially if you're in town or the country. Predators are always going to be a problem. In town, you're going to have to consider your neighbor's cats, your neighbor's dogs. You're going to have to consider birds, overhead threats, your own cats and your own dogs who may not have been introduced to these animals at an early age and aren't used to them. You're going to want a nice, safe place for those chickens. So whether you get some old fencing material or old pallets, start thinking about ways to create a nice barrier around your coop. And for your coop, before you run out and buy one of those really expensive, fancy coops at the Tractor Supply or wherever, your farm supply store, think about the things in your yard. Think about some other things that may not cost you as much. Now, if you've got the money and you want to spend it, by all means do it. But the chickens won't be any happier than they would in a larger space that may not have cost so much to construct. Consider your garden shed out in the yard there that you're keeping the lawnmower and stuff in. Maybe make some room in the garage and convert that into a chicken coop and give them as much space as you can, especially if they don't have a lot of outdoor space to run and they're going to be trapped inside. There's all kinds of ways you can get creative, but you have to make sure that they're secure. You have to make sure that they're safe from anything and everything that you can think of. Weasels, raccoons, they're all threats. Squirrels can be a threat to your younger birds. Other birds can be a threat to your chickens. And also, those cats and dogs in anywhere you're at, whether you're in the country or in town. Obviously, if you're out in the country, you got to consider any other predators that might be in your area and build to accommodate. Because if they are out there, they will try to get into your coop at night. So some other things to consider when you're doing your coop is your location, your weather, and what you're going to be dealing with. Some chickens are not good in heat, some are not good in cold. So you're going to want to take those things into consideration, but you're going to want to have good ventilation in your coop, especially if you're running any kind of heat for your chicks or for your chickens. Heat creates moisture. You need ventilation. You need to let that dust and air move. So we cut in a couple of small gable vents on each end. We also have a really large vent on our ceiling that was the old chute for the grain bin that we went ahead and put a screen door on. And in the summer, we can open that up and let the hot air vent out of here. It's really important, though, that your chickens have access to cool and shade in those hot summer days. And obviously, they really need protection from that cold winter air if you're in areas where the temperatures drop below zero. Some of your breeds can handle those colder temperatures, but you're going to want to make sure that they have good protection overnight, especially when they're sleeping in their coops. If you can insulate. If you can heat, run heat. Definitely take into consideration your sources and watch some of our other videos on that. If you're not sure on how to heat your coops, these oil heaters tend to be the best, and they do make some of these LED TV screens that are really awesome for your brooders, for your chicks, and they're really safe. They put off a nice amount of heat. The chickens can back right up to them. So really do your research when you're considering that, but make sure that your birds have protection from the elements. They are extremely fragile animals, and they can overheat really quickly, and they can start to develop frostbite and chill really quickly and develop health issues as a result. So take all those things into consideration. Make sure you've got good ventilation. They can develop respiratory issues if they're trapped inside for too long, and the air quality degrades over time. So make sure you've got that available to them. If you have big lit windows like we have here, in the summer, it can get really hot in here. This window faces the south, so that sun's in there all day. Make sure you've got some blinds. If you have to put some fans down in an area, if you don't have a lot of shade, grab a fan and they'll hang out in front of the fan to cool off. But make sure you take into consideration the comfort of the bird. Another handy point is a way to monitor the temperature in your coop. This is a super generic dollar store thermometer, cost a few bucks, and you don't need to get fancy with weather stations and everything else, but you do want to keep an eye on the temperature inside your coop. Your phone might tell you it's one temperature outside, but inside your coop could totally be different. And in a lot of cases, it can be 10 degrees hotter in here. So put one of these up so you can, keep track of your temperature and make sure your birds are comfortable. If you notice it starts to drop too much in your colder areas, then try to figure out a way to get some heat implemented into your thing if you're worried about frostbite or anything like that. And then obviously if it gets too hot, then you'll want to figure out a way to create some kind of a breeze or an area where the chickens can go to stay cool. Some of the things to look for, whether you're talking about overheated or too cold, when the birds are too cold, they'll kind of hunch up, fluff up, and kind of stand in one place. They'll seek sunlight. They'll seek an area where there might be warmth being generated by something naturally. So you want to look for that. And overheating is super easy. The same thing. You'll see their wings come out, so they're trying to let air pass through underneath and where all their down is. And they'll also pant. Their mouths will open, and you'll see that they're visibly hot. So keep an eye on those things and make the adjustments to your coop that you need to, no matter what you're using. Okay, you'll see we have lights in here. That is for us, not the chickens. We more or less have that on so that when we come out here at night and we need to see what we're doing, you do not want to disrupt your chickens' natural circadian rhythm. They need to stay in tune with the natural rising and setting of the sun. You will hear people say that they light to increase their egg production. It's not healthy for the bird. We don't do it. Make your choices on what you want to do for your birds, but make sure if you do have lights that they're either on some kind of a timer or you're turning them on manually and off manually so that they're not being kept on all night. It will disrupt the chicken's cycles, and it could disrupt your egg laying. It could increase it. It could decrease it. So try to make sure that you're providing them with as much of a natural setting as possible. Okay, so another thing to consider, we have winter shelter, overnight shelter door, and we also have this screen door on here. This lets a lot of nice, fresh, cool air in those hot summer days. So consider that when you're making your coop. Consider having a bit of an option there so that you can open it up and air it out really nice in those hot summer days. Also, when we talk about predators, all of your latches, it doesn't matter what you want to use to latch, whether you're using these, you're going to want to make sure you have some way to secure these. Raccoons specifically can manipulate these latches and locks. I have horses that can manipulate these latches and locks. So make sure you've got yourself some carabiner clips. Now you can pick these things up at the dollar store, super cheap. Just make sure, words for the wise is from the wise is make sure that the spring is working on that carabiner. If it's not working, if it does not engage back in, your horses or your raccoons will figure that out. So you're going to want to make sure you've got a good way to secure that coop at night and make sure they're good and safe. Okay, this is our outdoor run. Now, I went overkill. I had a lot of excess material from some salvage, some packaging material. So I went a little overkill. I made a nice high fence. This will stop most of the, coyotes and dogs, like foxes and certain things will climb and get over this. This isn't meant to protect the birds 24/7. This is just a deterrent during the day when we've got them out ranging around, and we wanted to provide them with as much space as we could. Eventually, this will actually be covered over completely because we want to protect the birds from wild birds. And I'm not talking about hawks and eagles necessarily, although they are a threat. You will notice when you start to keep chickens that the wild birds will start to accumulate around your property and more often. And over the course of time, you will see those groups of birds increase and increase and increase. Now, that's going to introduce all kinds of sickness and disease to your flock. Also, you're going to go through more food. So if you're going to create an outdoor run such as this, try to consider covering it overhead and stop those wild birds from coming in, eating all your food, and exposing your birds to diseases. Okay, so you'll see our run we have attached to our chicken coop, and this is an old Quonset that we actually converted into a barn. Part of the fun thing about homesteading and keeping animals is getting creative, and one of the things I've enjoyed most about doing this is as you get creative, you get more creative. So as you start to build something out of nothing, you start to see other things that people consider nothing becoming something. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. So start looking around your house, Go into the industrial park, start asking people for pallets. There's all kinds of things that you can use to build and facilitate your needs for keeping chickens. Pallets are one of my favorite things. They can be converted into a lot of things. This is all repurposed packaging material. We did not buy any lumber to set these chickens up. So get creative with it, folks, and start looking around, start asking your friends that are in the trades if they have any materials on the job site that's being thrown away, and start gathering that stuff up, because you'd be surprised what you can create with it. Whether you're in town or you're in, you've bought your place in the country and you're homesteading out in the country, keeping chickens, they're extremely fragile. You're going to want to take into consideration any kind of pesticides or herbicides you're using on your property. We use absolutely none. Everything here is organic, so you will see some weed growth. The chickens will ingest anything that they're free ranging, whether it's the grass or the dandelion or the bugs. If those bugs and those grasses have been exposed to those herbicides or pesticides, you're exposing them to your chickens, which in turn is exposing you to it, because you're eating those eggs which have been exposed to those chemicals. Now, a lot of science is out there. I'm not going to go into depth, but those chemicals that they're selling you are really bad, not just for you, but your environment, and they will be bad for your chickens. So take into consideration your weed and pest control. They will do it for you. If you've got bugs in your yard, let those chickens roam. They will eat every single one of them. We had a problem with grasshoppers a couple years back. We didn't have a single grasshopper in our yard, but the neighbor's field had millions of them. And the chickens will keep that under control. So throw those things out. Don't buy them again. And your dandelion, it's not a bad thing. It's probably the healthiest thing that those chickens can be eaten. So let them clean up that dandelion in your yard. Let them clean up your gardens. But you definitely take into consideration the stopping of any kind of herbicides or pesticides in your yards if you're going to be keeping chickens back there. They're also bad for your other pets as well. So little known fact that they don't tell you when they're selling that stuff to you. Okay, so another point we wanted to cover, if you're in an area like we are, where the temperatures are below zero for months at a time, you're going to want to consider some kind of a good indoor space where you can let the chickens kind of run around and scratch and stretch their legs and, not be completely bored to death, trapped in a little coop. We gave up quite a bit of space here in our barn to these girls. We didn't mind. We don't want them being stuck in that little coop all year or else winter long. So think about ways that you can create a space for your girls, and they'll appreciate it. And you may even see some egg production through the winter months if they have a nice, comfortable place to go. So whether you're building something or you're able to convert something on your property into a space, definitely take it into consideration if you're in those colder areas. You're going to want to make sure that they have a nice dust bath and some stuff to play on as well, especially if they're trapped inside for those winter months. They'll be a lot happier for it. Okay, so you got your breed selection and you got your chicks home, but you're not sure what to feed. There are generally 3 different feeds for chickens. You've got your chick feed for your baby chicks, and you've got your layer rations for your hens that are laying eggs, and you've got your hen scratch, they call it, which is more or less just a mix of different grains. And the hen scratch is good all around, all the time. We kind of keep a steady supply of that going. We also supplement. We give sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, flax seed. We try to increase that protein level as much as we can. The pumpkin seeds help with parasites. We try to give them table scraps. We try to give them as much raw food as we can versus the bagged food. I'm not going to bash any of the bagged foods, but they tend to like the more natural scraps from the table and all the stuff you're throwing in your compost. They tend to like that stuff a lot more. They love tuna fish. They love ham. They love different protein sources. Now, your layer rations will have more of the mineral they need, also the crude proteins for the egg production. There are calcium supplements that you can give to your layers. We also bake your eggs and reuse the shells as a feed supply for the chickens. But you're going to want to make sure that you have a steady supply of food for them always. We use this trough feeder system. There's all kinds of different feeding systems out there that you can choose what works best for your setup. But yeah, definitely make sure you're feeding the right things. And if you're seeing any health issues or anything like that, then definitely look at the diet of the chicken and what you're feeding them and what they might be lacking. We are going to do a video that covers chicken health and wellness that goes into a little more depth of how to identify the signs and symptoms of different malnutrition. There's a lot of health issues that chickens can develop that are simply corrected with nutrition. And that'll be our last video in the series. Okay, so if you've chosen to bring home baby chicks for the first time, we want to help you with a few things you're going to need. They are a little more work than bringing home adults or pullets as far as hens are concerned. They are much smaller, obviously, more fragile, so you're going to want to consider having some kind of a brooder box to keep them in. Some creative ways I've seen people using their bathtubs. We used a dog kennel to keep them safe. They need to be enclosed. They need to be someplace safe. They need to have a constant heat source for the first several weeks of their life. Okay, so your baby chicks are going to need heat. Fahrenheit, you're looking 95 degrees for like the first week of their life, and then it incrementally drops 5 degrees every week after that. So you're going to need a steady heat supply. And these LED heaters, they call them, are the best thing ever. We used to use a lot of different things like heat lights and everything that are a little more dangerous. These are really safe. They won't harm the chicks. They are best hung like this in your brooder box so that the chickens can come in underneath of it. I see a lot of people using it like this. That works, but as you can see, you can only get a few chicks up against that screen. If you set it like this and hang it with some wire nice and secure from the top of your brood box, keep it just a few inches off the ground, they can get up underneath there, stay nice and warm, and it simulates being underneath of a hen, basically. You're also going to need, obviously, food and water supply and grit. Now, we use some of the healthier sand from around the yard, get it nice and dried out. You can buy chick grit. They need that grit. It helps with their digestion and getting their digestive system up and going. You'll need a feeder and something to water them with. Now, if you don't want to buy or you don't want to go out and get these things from the stores, some of this stuff actually came with our brooder, or our incubator rather. So we just kind of held on to it. This is your little food. You're going to want to make sure it does have something like this to stop them from getting in there and kicking all the food out of there, because they're chicks and they will do that, and you'll go through a lot more food that way. So these things are really inexpensive at the store, folks. So don't hesitate to spend a few bucks on those things. They're worth the trouble and the effort. Same thing with your waterers. Now, you can drown a baby chick with your watering, so don't just stick a bowl of water in that brood box. You got to have something that they can't really fall into and drown necessarily. So if you don't have a little watering system like this, you can get a small dish, a small bowl, set some pebbles in there, get some stones from out in the driveway or whatever, and get them in there so that, if they do fall in as they're trying to drink, they don't drown. Those are things you're going to absolutely need if you're bringing home those baby chicks. And keep in mind, the first several weeks of your life is going to be generally taking care of chickens. So it's well worth it. They're the greatest. But yeah, it is going to be a bit more work if you choose to go the baby chick route. So take all those things into consideration. Okay, so one other point, if you are bringing home those little baby chicks, is try and give them as much room as you can, because the more they can move around and run around, the healthier they get. But have some stuff in there for them to play on. Build some little roosts or some little things for them to climb on, and you'll find that the chicks that are lower on the pecking order will have some place to get up and get away from those other ones. So if you really want to get them used to being outside, and it's a nice warm sunny day, after that first few days, you want to bring them outside. You can see how they will love being out in the grass and exploring the grass. So don't be afraid to bring them outside for a few minutes and get them out in the sun and let them enjoy a nice sunny day. You'll know they're done with being outside if they start to chirp too much and cry and cry and cry. Again, they won't like being out from underneath that heat light or that heat source for very long. So take that into consideration if you do choose to bring them outside for a photo shoot or just to get them used to their new environment. So thank you for watching. Again, this was part 2 of a 4-part series we're doing to cover everything you need to bring those chicks home and get them set up and taking care of them. So if I missed anything, which I'm sure I did, we started raising chicks almost 10 years ago, and I just started doing these videos this year. So I'm sure I've forgotten something. If I did, all of our great help out there, please drop it in the comments. Or if you have creative ways you came up with to build your coops or your brooding boxes for your baby chicks, please drop it in the comments there and help everybody out. There's a lot of people getting into chickens right now, and we want to make sure that not only the chickens do well, but everybody doesn't get discouraged and has a good time and learns the joys of raising chickens.